we go.
Hello, everyone. How is everyone? We've got nobody yet. I'll just wait till at least maybe one or two come in and then I'll introduce. Oh, we have one. Oh, it's always great when you get the first one in. Whoever you are, can you say me hello? Just so that I know that you can hear me. Hello, Nettie. It's yourself. Looking forward to speaking to you tomorrow night. Hey, Eric. Right, I'm going to go because we're 5 minutes late already. So, 3 you done, and so tonight, guys, this is a really, really big, important one tonight. As you may be aware, you may not be aware, Zak Clayton right now is doing a 22-hour marathon for veterans in suicidal prevention. It's called, I thought it was Operation Diehart, but it's actually Project Diehart, as I was told after I made the advertisement. So tonight we wanted to support Zak in what he's doing just now. So if you haven't already, guys, whether you want to go over just now, whether you want to watch us and then go over, but I would love for you guys to please even pop in and just say a wee hello, show your support to Zak and what he's doing just now, because he's doing a really good thing. Hi, Nigel. Hi, Rita. So, I can't really talk from a veterinary point of view, but Mr. Wayne Seaton can. So, Mr. Wayne, would you like to tell everybody about your life and
About
the
my
forces?
life?
Yes, about your life. What about the forces?
Well, I was born in 1974. No, that's too early. I joined the Royal Air Force back in May 1991. And I then sort of only just now recently discovered that you are categorised as a veteran if you've only served 1 day in any military service. I never classed myself as a veteran. I did my service. I was made redundant, and basically that was it as far as I was concerned. I recently tried to reapply. I was told I can go for officers training for the reserves. Only a lovely thing called sleep apnea came along. But in my full-time career in the Royal Air Force, I had the opportunity to do a day course of my own choosing, and I always loved cooking. So while I was still serving full-time, I did an evening course in catering and chefing. When redundancy came along, I was given the option of coming home and going to Colchester Institute and continuing my chef's courses, which upon leaving, I went down for an interview. My station commander had set up the interview with the Dean of Studies there. I then went in, I did my Chefs City and Guild 706-1 and 706-2. So I became a qualified chef and straight into work. So on that side of things, it was getting that opportunity sort of got me steadfast to be welcomed back into the community again, into civilian life. It's not that case for a lot of servicemen and ex-servicemen. A friend of mine, a very good friend of mine from Yorkshire, he had originally served as a sergeant in bomb disposal in the army, and he left the army on compassionate grounds. He'd gone through a bit of a bad divorce with his now ex-wife, and so he had to leave the army. Once things had sort of cleared up a little bit and he got himself sorted out, he then came back and joined the RAF and joined alongside me in the regiment. When the redundancies came, he was one of the first people to be given his marching orders as such. And I sat down with him while we discussed what our options were. We tried to change jobs, tried to remuster into jobs that were available. There was nothing there. So I had to make the decision what to do. Station commander had already said that, you know, you can go to Colchester Institute, continue your chef's courses, and then come back as a chef. They will take you in because you'd be qualified. So I'd already said to him, well, you know, we can't change jobs. There's nothing there. We've got to take the redundancies. So I'm opting to go for my chef's course, and then I'm going to come back. He didn't know what to do. He wasn't a civilian. He couldn't be a civilian. He couldn't handle civilian life. And I said to him, why not go for the Navy? And he went, no, I could not be on them ships. You know, that would be the end of him, I think, if he was cooped up inside a small space, even though a lot of these modern warships now are quite spacious. He likes to be out in the open, so a warship would be no good to him. Unless it was a vintage warship where he could be in a crow's nest all the time, where he's out in the open, that wouldn't have been him. Must have been about 4 or 5 months after I left. I was just sitting at home one day, there's a knock on the door. I opened the door and there he is standing there. I'm like, wow, you know, you've come all the way down from Yorkshire to see us. He said, well, I thought I'd pop in and say hello before I go. So I'm like, go, where are you going? Have you chosen to go into the Navy? He said, no, I've joined the mercenaries. I'm like, seriously, you've gone into a private military group? And he said, yeah. He said, I can't do anything else. He said, I can't even go into security here because of his mental health record. They actually said it was because he was unstable that they couldn't employ him. So he couldn't even be a security guard in a supermarket. So he'd made the decision to join the mercenaries. And I think at the time it was it Bosnia and Kosovo, I think at the time. Never heard from him ever again. He was here for 2 days and then he left, and I haven't heard from him since. And that was in 96, 97.
Oh my God.
Never heard from him ever again. So I can only assume he's gone over there and that's finished him off. And I think for me, there's two sides. There's two sides to everything, because there are organisations there set up for veterans to help veterans. This is UK only. I don't know about the United States or anywhere else in the world, but I know with our government there are organisations now put in place to try and help people that are either transitioning out of the military into civilian street, or there are charities there or organisations there that can help those people. But when you look at the statistics of how many are about, it's quite shocking. And over the years, we've been the powers that be have been told what to do. And so our armed forces have been depleted so much that it's not really a fighting force anymore. And as of 2021, March 2021, there was 2.45 million veterans. That's a crazy amount of veterans out there. And it shouldn't be. And 4 to 6% of those are unemployed through medical reasons, or they're seeking work. So there's quite a lot there that are still looking for work, or they're sick. But it's more how the aftercare is. You are put into a system, you are built up, you are mentally trained on how to cope with situations. But in civilian street, you aren't getting those situations. So that section of your mind as such has got to be locked away. But the problem then is when you're in active duty, and you may go to a battle zone. You're on front. You could be on frontline duties or on clear up duties. You could go out there and you could see and hear things that you're not prepared for, but you're trained to lock it away mentally. Then the problem is once you get back, those memories can come back.
Yeah.
It unlocks itself. And if you're in what we call civvy street, it's not as easy to keep them locked away. Certain situations could unlock that, and that changes your whole perspective to everything. And that's where the support is needed. And the problem is not everybody will go and look for that support, even though it's there. They look at it and say, you need to come to us.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, especially in men, feel too proud to actually go forward and say, I need help. Something's not right. I can't handle it. And like I say, for me, I was lucky. I came out of the Royal Air Force and I went straight into further education and straight into work. So that platform was already there. When I left working as chefing, because I couldn't stand being a chef anymore, I was more stable in my environment and I was quite happy and capable of coping with civilian life again. I'd been in kitchens where I was my own boss. I was in charge of other people. So it was almost as if the Royal Air Force was still there in my kitchen. And I was able to treat it like I was in a military kitchen. But as soon as I walked away from that, I'm literally gone from job to job to job, doing different things. I've done all sorts of jobs. And it's kept me going. And as a result of that, I've never been out of work for more than 2 weeks. So I've been lucky. But that's because I've had the support behind me and people have been there to back me up. There are a lot of people out there that don't get that backup. And that's when their mental health starts deteriorating. And, they feel too proud to ask for help because they've spent all that time in the military not needing it or getting the support there. But as soon as they leave, their pride shuts it out.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you there, Wayne. Because I suppose if you look at the military really, it teaches you. I've seen a lot of men go into the army and come out more like the perfect man's man, where there's no discuss feeling, no discuss emotions, no show emotions. And I suppose when you're in that sort of settings, when you're in such places like Afghanistan, such places like that, Ukraine, because there's a lot of British people that went and fought in Ukraine. So whether you're in Ukraine, whether you're in Afghanistan, whether you're in Iraq, I was trying to think of the other third name that was in my head, and it was Iraq. You've got to be strong. You've got no choice. You've got to take lives. It might not be what you want to do, but that's what you're basically signed up for. As hard it is to hear that sort of thing.
There is a crazy misconception because a lot of people, I think it might have something to do with society of today, but some people don't understand that when you go into the military, regardless of what trade it is, you could be going in as a chef, electrician, a plumber, infantryman, a mechanic, or even in the artillery. But before you learn all of these different trades, the first thing you learn is how to kill someone. And I've seen videos where they've turned around and gone, oh, don't know what you're going to be a chef in the army for or chef in the RAF for. You're only going to be cooking food. No, you're not. Because the first thing you learn is how to kill somebody, then how to help somebody if they're injured. Then you learn how to feed somebody.
Yeah.
So you learn to kill before you learn to help them survive. You know,
Yeah.
and a lot of people don't seem to understand that. And it's the mental attitude that gets drummed inside you when you first get there. From the very first day when you join as a pure raw recruit in the military, discipline is drummed into you from square one. I was 15 when I left school. I had to wait a year before I could join the Royal Air Force. So I worked as a zookeeper for a year. So I was looking after animals, of all things. I then left Colchester Zoo, and then I had to look after a whole new load of animals. Because there's me in the Royal Air Force at the age of 16. Permission had to be given by my parents for me to join. And my mum turned around and said, if that's what you want to do, let them go. So they did. They let me go in. And then straight away from the word go, here's your uniform. We're off out to the firing range. You're going to learn how to fire a rifle, how to take it apart, how to clean it, how to put it back together again. Full magazine in that target within the first 2 weeks. You know, and it's like the marching discipline as well. And they're not nice. They weren't nice about it. Nowadays, the military nowadays, compared to how it was in the 90s and earlier, completely different. Supposedly, they're not allowed to swear at you. They're not allowed to what we call beast you, which meant sort of give you a kick up the bum and tell you to sort your effing life out and things like this. They can't do that anymore. They've got to the softly touch, you know, got to be nice and gentle, wrap you in cotton wool. That's no good on a battlefield.
No,
you know,
no.
You've got to be
How's that going to help somebody in the battlefield if they're going
exactly.
for softy teach? It's going to go.
So from day one, they drum this mental attitude into your mind from day one. But what they don't do is they don't sort your mental attitude out when you leave. And that's what's missing. In my opinion, that's what's missing. Because I left the RAF knowing all these different ways on how to kill people, how to help people, how to feed people. But they didn't tell me how to permanently block some of the things that I'd seen or some of the things that I'd heard. I mean, the things that I'd seen would have still give me nightmares today. I can still wake up in the middle of the night seeing some of the images of things that I'd seen while I was in service.
That's
and
horrible.
I have to lock them away straight away. And I do wonder partly why my imagination is like it is. Because my imagination is so far out there. It is literally a Stephen King, Clive Barker type imagination, blood and guts and all sorts. And I've got a sneaky suspicion that part of that is there. And it's from my experiences that's sort of leaking through. But there's nothing to support you unless you go looking for it. And I did do a little bit of research, and there are...
Can I just quickly stop you there and run through the comments quickly? Hi Ria, hi Sarah Louise, hi Nicola. Ursula says thank you for your service. Vaughn's saying good evening to us. Good evening. No good, Ria, I hope you're okay. Hi Vaughan. Holly says this is a big problem here. I'm part of the programme for mental health. Hey Nettie. Nicola saying how awful it is. Holly says the veterans have to recognise they have a problem and comment to help. Eric said we have really good charities here for veterans, just a pity no in the UK. Vaughan says it is discussing how our veterans are treated. My son was suicidal after they came back from Afghan. No work, no support. It was bad PTSD. It was horrendous for him and many others. Sarah Louise says it's sickening how the government treats the armed forces. Holly says there's stories that need to be heard but not remembered. War veterans. Lynn's just seen this. Don't worry, my sweetheart, it's fine. Vaughan says my nephew was having recurring nightmares from an incident involving his crew where his team was killed and he witnessed it happening. Sarah Louise says even if they do, there are so many cuts to mental health services in this country. Totally agree, Wayne. I know people in this situation where they shut it out because they're too proud or don't recognise they have some problem. They convert and hide it. Holly says it's kind of devastating to know that you're just fobbed for the cannon. You're easily replaceable and just reusable equipment to your own government. Eric says try growing up with a dad that's a Marine. Holly said I did too. Vaughn says my nephew was a chef but he did engineering as well. Sarah Louise says the enemy have guns, not feather duster. No feather dusters. That made me snigger there. Eric says they still that kind of training here, and it's just fun. I'm
Yeah,
hoping by the end of this, right, when you got my love.
I mean, the point that was made about that the UK government don't do enough. They have looked into things now, and there are a lot of charities out there and government organisations over the last 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, quite possibly 40 years too late, because this should have been something the government should have been putting in place right from the word go. As soon as they knew, right away back to probably the First World War, was shell shock.
Yeah.
You know, shell shock wasn't a thing there. It was just, oh, they've just gone mad, just get them out of the way, you know, and that was how that was. Now they know that shell shock and PTSD are near enough the same thing. It needs to be helped. You know, you can't just push someone with PTSD to one corner and say, just disappear into the darkness and we'll forget you exist. You know, there are now organisations that you can go to. I mean, the top one out of all of the list, and I was quite shocked because I was told off for not joining them myself, and that's the Royal British Legion. I've been told off because I didn't join them, and I said I didn't think I'd served long enough. I thought I had to have done a full term of service, which was 9 years. And they turned around and went, no, you only have to be in the forces for 1 day to be classed as a veteran, which means you can join the British Legion. Didn't know that. But as far as I was concerned, I was able to rejoin civilian life without any issues. As far as I was concerned, at the time, I didn't see any issues. And I think it could be my time in the RAF is what's in a way causing the sleep apnea. So it's sort of not until later life where these things start to materialize, but I've been able to deal with them a little bit better than I would have done, quite possibly back then when I was only like 21 years old. Bit of a lad, I can just, yeah, whatever, I'll get back out there, no problem. And straight away, I'm busy. I'm keeping my mind occupied. And that kept all these thoughts and feelings locked up. Your mum needs to be run. So of course, it's there, but it just needs that something to open that door and let it all out. And I've had a couple of moments where I've thought to myself, crumbs, you know, the amount of times I've just said there and I wish I was back in the RAF. And then 2 years ago, I finally said, that's it. I've got to go back. And Ella, my partner, said, you know, if you want to go back into the RAF, go back. So I did. I started the ball rolling. I'm like, that's it. I'm going back. So I went through all the appointments. I had the medicals. I did the aptitude tests. They even then turned around to me and said, we'd like you to go to RAF Cranwell and do the officers training. We want you to come back here as a pilot officer. Because I was able to retain my rank, but because I'd done further education after I'd left and I'd got degrees from Oxford and Cambridge, they asked me to go back in as an officer. So I'm like, yeah, brilliant. That's great. I'm loving it. And they literally got me down to my uniform sizes. So I was literally a stone's throw away from rejoining. And then all of a sudden, me doctors, I had to go to the doctors because I had a problem, and they turned around and said, you've got sleep apnea. I'm like, thanks for that. You've just stopped me dead in my tracks. Just like that. Just like that, my dream was over, and I was as miserable as sin for weeks.
Oh, honey.
You know, I've had to just say to myself, fine, sod it. If I can't go back, I can't go back. It's meant to be. So I just have to just carry on with other things. But you've got the Royal British Legion there. They're there for, they can help with rehabilitation, finances, employment and housing, as well as other vital services that veterans could and do need. But they also help out families, but they also sort out families of members of the armed forces that have died in action.
Yeah.
And it can go back quite a way. So it's like a friend of mine, he was given help by the Royal British Legion. His dad served in the army, but his dad died about 15, 20 years ago. And yet the Royal British Legion said they could help him find a place to live because he found himself homeless. So they even help out veterans' families as well. They also have the Veterans Welfare Service, which is Defence Transitional Services and Injury Bereavement Compensation Scheme, and that's for veterans. The NHS now has just recently started one as an expanded mental health support service for armed forces veterans. Because they did a survey and found out more than half find it difficult to speak up about mental health issues. So that's more than 50%. But regardless of whether it's more than half of them or 10%, it doesn't make any difference what the figure of people it is. That service should have been there right from the word go.
Yeah. No, you know what? I got to totally agree that, and the problem is that these are people who are fighting for our country, and they don't. And just soon, guys, we're going to move on and talk about homeless and veterans, because I think that's a really big issue as well as veterans who are homeless. And I think a lot of people misconstrue why somebody's on the street, and it's amazing the amount of people who look down at homeless people and don't realise that most of these people are actually veterans and ex-veterans. I mean, the statistic was 2,100 households with somebody who served in the armed forces was assessed as homeless in 22 to 23, according to the figures for the Department of Housing, up from 1,850 last year. So that's went right up.
Yeah, I mean, to put that statistic into better context, 10,000 people were sleeping rough as of autumn 2022. 2,110 of those people were veterans. So that's over 25% of the homeless people that slept rough in autumn 2 years ago. 25%. And that's wrong.
Bad.
You know, it shouldn't be that way. You know, for even when you look at statistics, and they can try and cover up statistics, but you can go out on the street and you can see a lot of these people. And because Colchester is a military town, it's a garrison town. We have some veteran homeless camping out in the doorways on Colchester High Street, and you can tell they're military because they've got the tattoos of their regiment on there, or they're wearing a piece of their own uniform that they had while they were serving. But you can go up and you can talk to them, and they'll tell you where they served. They can tell you what regiment they were in, and they'll tell you their serial number. What we do have to be careful of course, is those that fake being veterans and being homeless veterans. We had one guy recently was banned from Colchester city centre because he was actually pestering people and begging people for money, claiming to be a veteran. And yet every day when he'd finished in the city centre, he would go home to his house, count up his money. And he was found out for being fake, and he was given a community resolution order and banned from the city centre because he got found out. And now if anybody sees him in town, he's been beaten up a number of times for false valour. You know, he's claiming that he's been doing this and he did this in the army, he did that in the army. And all it was because he got information from friends that had been in the army, and he used that to his advantage.
That's
And
horrible.
it ended up in the local newspaper that he'd done it on purpose. He posed as a homeless person from the military to get money from people. So there are two sides to it, but it's the statistics are crazy. But when you've got the government that then turns around and says, you know what, we've realised now there are so many people with PTSD out there that their life goes in a downhill spiral, and next minute you know they've got into debt, they've got mental health issues, and they need help with those mental health issues. But like we said, if they don't come forward and say that there's an issue, they're not going to get the help, and that is key to it. So what they've done now is they've put out the health service. I think it was the 9th of January. The National Health Service launched a new campaign to help to highlight the Op Courage service, which now includes enhanced specialist support for addictions as well as mental health issues. So, and they reckon that from April to November 2023, more than 4,500 referrals were made to the NHS service, which provides specialist care, support and treatment to former armed services personnel, reservists and service leavers with mental health and well-being issues. And since then, more than 30,000 referrals have been made to the Veterans Mental Health and Wellbeing Lifeline service since it was first launched by the NHS in 2017. So there are more services out there now than there was. Certainly a hell of a lot more than when I left the RAF. So they are now realising that, you know what, we need to look after these people. And the thing is like recently there was all this business about, you could get conscripted back into the armed forces. Now, I wonder how, out of the 2.45 million veterans there are out there, how many of them are still of fighting age, and how many of those would want to go back? How many of those would object to being conscripted back into the armed forces after the way they've been treated and been left to get on with things? You know, I don't think any of the homeless veterans that are out there are going to say, yeah, I'll go back just because it means to get a roof over my head. I don't think any of them would. And I think it's very sad that they had to do that. And I mean, I've said it before on a podcast before. I don't like seeing anybody sitting on the street, you know, and begging for money. And I used to go to McDonald's quite a lot, and obviously I love my coffee, so I always used to buy my McDonald's coffee and used to get the little coffee bean sticker on the cups. Now I used to collect them, and they used to last a year, those coffee beans. And I would go to McDonald's about 2 or 3 times a week. So I would constantly be getting these coffee bean stickers. Whenever I got a full card, I would wait until it started to get cold, and then I'd go up to these homeless guys up on the high street, and I would give them the coffee bean cards. They would get my free coffee. I couldn't care less. I'm like, yeah, mate, going into McDonald's, or I would go in myself and get them and take them out there. All it took was a little bit of thought. Not long, as you know, just a couple of minutes. You know, he's sitting there. He's served just like I have. I've landed on my feet. I've been a lucky one. But all those people out there that haven't been so fortunate and have ended up in rough times, they deserve a break. So even if it is a cup of coffee to keep them warm, that helps. And there's not enough of that out there.
There isn't. I'm just going to quickly run through the comments because they're building like nothing else tonight. Boris denied shelter. He's wasted oxygen, that boy, Sarah. Yvonne says, my nephew felt he had let everyone down because he'd done Falklands, Iraq, Afghan, broke him. I think Britain is going to start again. Respect to you, Wayne, Yvonne says. Lynn says, the young people of today don't want to join the forces because they see how the government are treating the veterans. Look how some soldiers have been prosecuted for doing their jobs. Unbelievable being prosecuted for doing what you're told to do. Don't blame the young people. if it is, do they get a choice? NHS kicked him to the curb. No, Vaughn, you have to go. Right, that's just a conversation. Um, right, I think attitudes have changed to a degree with the cost of living crisis. Once, right, don't think I'm being rude, guys, when I'm skipping through the conversation. Doncaster is full of them. It's heartbreaking. We had one like that, Wayne, and he was paying for his home. Wow, his
Yep.
home in the apartment in Spain. Um, help for heroes, help my nephew. Thank God, that's nice. I went to a funeral 2 years ago for a veteran who had no family. When all the people arrived at the funeral, and there was quite a few veterans who went in respect to him because he was in the forces. It was revealed at the funeral that this guy had never been in the army. He lied about everything just to get respect from the people.
Yeah.
Believe what I was hearing at this funeral. Policy as part of the agreement when we signed up was that they would always take care of us. We signed a cheque that said we would service with everything we had up to and including our lives.
Yep.
The politicians could go and fight, send their kids instead of sitting on their entitled, you know what, pulling in the profits.
The problem is now is that the people of today, if they were to, or the kids of today, I should say, more than anything, if they were to go into the armed forces, I would say 99.9% of the kids would be on their knees in fits of tears within the first 2 hours.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be able to handle it. They're not built of the same material that we were back in the 90s, and earlier. They just wouldn't be able to cope with it. Even though they've got to be more of the soft touch on recruits nowadays, they still wouldn't be able to handle it because it's too demanding, and they're not used to that demand. That's why a lot of parents will say to their kids, join the air cadets, join the Navy cadets, or the Army cadets. Get yourself some discipline. Learn to do these things, and then maybe, you never know, you might actually enjoy it and then join the army for real, and that will set you up for a career. And I'd be quite happy for my kids to do something like that.
I always wanted to do it, but my dad wouldn't sign my forms, and it was simply down because of what happened to my uncle. Now, my uncle, God love his soul, was in the army. I was actually trying to get my uncle, but he was in a meeting to tell me what regiment my uncle was in. But he was in the army for many years, and I can always remember my Uncle Graham coming home for the army, and remember seeing his suit, and he used to put his jacket around my shoulders. Now you can imagine me being a young lass with this jacket on that's drowning me. Unfortunately, I don't know if it still goes on in the army. I would hate to think at this day it still goes on. But my uncle was beat by his sergeant, the high one up fame, and my Uncle Graham never ever told anyone. And during these beatings, he ended up with epilepsy. It left him with epilepsy, which then he had to be discharged. Now, instead of my uncle, now he loved the army. The army was his life. He and his best man served in the army. Two of them loved it. Instead of my uncle reporting it, he took a bribe for an office job because he didn't want to go against. So the years that my uncle came out, unfortunately, the epilepsy took him. Though, as much as I love my uncle, God rest his soul, part of it was his fault as well because he never took the medication. But with that being said, he used to tell me the stories about his army life and that, and I used to love hearing them. And I always thought, one day I want to do that. But my dad would never ever sign the form for me to do that. And I do miss my uncle a lot. And as I said, he really did love the army. That was his life. So that's only the story I can really share about my uncle. That's why I'm so glad that you're a veteran, an ex-veteran, because
Yeah.
it's like you can tell a lot more than what I could have done tonight. So I'm really glad that we did do the show tonight
I
because
mean, the thing
it's
is,
good
though,
to obviously hear the story.
it's not obviously it's not just because I'm a veteran myself. I mean, you could just talk to somebody that is a veteran themselves, sort of in the street or in the pub or in a shop, cafe or whatever. I mean, a few years back, my mum used to work for this guy. She used to help clean his bungalow for him and his wife.
Mm-hmm.
And he obviously got old, as we do. His wife died. She passed away. And he was on his own.
Yep.
But because of his age, he got diabetes and he ended up losing a leg. And because he lost a leg, he needed someone to do his garden. My mum, being the wonderful person she is, goes, "My son will come and do it." Thanks, Mum. So I'd go round there and I would do his garden for him. But one day I was talking to my mum. She said, "One day,
Hey,
sit
Andy.
down with him and have a chat." She said, "You'll be surprised." So, and why is that? She said, "He was in the Desert Rats." Really? So one day I'd gone round, I'd done what he needed me to do in the garden, and I sat with him and talked to him. And he was in the Desert Rats during the Second World War.
Wow.
And the things he told me, I was gobsmacked. I mean, in this modern day, we've got these special backpacks that help keep as much water in as possible, so we don't really have to sort of die of thirst. But in them days, didn't have that privilege. And one of the stories he told me was they were out in the desert. They were low on water, but they had plenty of fuel, and they all needed washes. So rather than stay dirty, they needed to wash. So to save on water, they used the fuel for the vehicles.
Oh my God, really?
So they are there washing themselves down with diesel fuel or petrol fuel, whatever their vehicles were taking to clean themselves. So then one guy, he washed his arms down, didn't wait long enough for the fuel to evaporate off his arm, went and lit a cigarette.
Oh my God, no.
Next minute, his arm went up in smoke. That's
Oh
him
my
off.
God.
That's
him.
And it was stories like that, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, I've watched so many films and documentaries on World War II, and yet something like that has never ever been mentioned in any of these films and documentaries. And yet, from a total random person that I've met, he has told me something like that, which has blown my mind away. And every time I went round there, we'd sit there and have a coffee about what he did when he was in the Desert Rats, and how we met in Montgomery.
Oh,
He met old General Monty, and I'm thinking, wow, and these are the stories that get passed on from one generation to the next to the next. He never told his son any of these things, but he told me because I was an ex-serviceman myself, and I couldn't believe it. And his son knows about the things that he did during World War II now because he kept a journal. And obviously, when he eventually died, all his belongings passed down to his son, and his son found all the journals. So he eventually did find out. But I knew about them first. And it's...
Do you know what? That doesn't really surprise me because I suppose when, like, veterans can see other veterans and can feel comfortable telling them the stories, maybe he just didn't want to emotionally scar his family, which is honestly fair enough because the things my uncle used to tell me weren't like he wouldn't tell me like the proper things. It would just be that he went to this country, he seen this or he seen that, but it would never ever go into the detail. But
Yep.
but see, my job, because everybody knows, I used to do caring. And I've looked after a lot of clients who have been veterans, ex-veterans, and the one that I'll never ever forget is one guy who I used to look after, God rest his soul, and that man was so tortured. And I don't mean we tortured him, by the way, just in case anybody thinks I tortured the old days. He was so tortured with nightmares. Uh, Even when the dementia turned over with the brain, this guy used to scream and shout, and he would never let you like touch him or anything like that, because he used to be in one of the war camps. He
Yeah.
was in one of the war camps, and he was so tortured. And the things you used to hear that man scream, I can hear them in my lungs right now as we speak.
Yeah.
And it was really, really, really horrible. And there was nothing. It didn't matter whether two is sat beside them to try and soothe them, and it didn't matter how many times we told them you're not there anymore. You're in Scotland. You're blah blah blah. It didn't
Yeah.
matter how many times he was still convinced he was still in this war camp, and he didn't mean it, God love him. But when I went to give him tea once, he obviously, I don't know what he's seen, and I would love to have seen what he's seen through his eyes. But he scalped the tea, and it got me over the chest. And it was I let out a scream, but it was a shock. See the heat he hitting my chest. Obviously, I got a fright as well, and I screamed, and it made him cry. And he's like, "I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry." And I went, it's okay." And I was trying to like soothe
Yeah.
him, but it was the most heartbreakingest
I
thing
think, and
in my job.
that is where I find the biggest issue is because we are trained to lock things away. We
Hmm.
don't, we go out into Civvy Street and we go about our lives. But the problem is, it's as soon as we close our eyes, they're still open. Because what we don't see physically during the day while we're awake, all those memories and images that we might have seen, or the situations that we had been in during service, get unlocked from the subconscious.
Mm.
So you could have gone through a whole situation where, you're a group of 10 guys and half of you just disappeared because of the action. But all of a sudden, your subconscious is just unlocked, and all those faces all of a sudden come back all at once. And then next minute, you're sitting bolt upright, wide awake, with a cold sweat, wondering what the hell has just happened. And it's those images you can't get rid of. And I think what they needed to do, or they've always needed to do, is they need to have some sort of mental health evaluation for all personnel that are leaving the armed forces, to make sure that they are prepared and ready for civilian life.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like I say, I was lucky. Because I was doing a day release course in the evenings, I was fine. I was set up. But there were so many people that didn't get that privilege. And they come out, and I've lost contact with everybody that I served with.
Mm-hmm.
And it shouldn't be like that, you
Yeah,
know.
it is.
And
It shouldn't
I went back, even when I went back for my interviews to go back into the reserves, I went back there and they turned around and said, "We noticed you served here. When was that?" I said, "From 91 till 95. And he went, "My word," he said, "you left shortly after I got here." And it was almost like I'd known him. It
Mm-hmm.
was almost as if I worked with him when I was there. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. And he's due to retire.
Oh, it's
And
good.
he did something like 30 years now. And
Oh, wow.
he's loved every minute of it. He's now able to retire. He said he was going to do one last contract, as such as he called it, and then that was it. He was going to leave, but that was because then he could retire and sit back with his wife and just watch the world go by. But he is still going to have those images when he goes to bed.
Oh, I can imagine. I can
So
imagine.
that is where something like mental health evaluation would come in handy, because then if they discover that this person is suffering from PTSD or another form of post-traumatic stress that could be treated before they leave, or continue to give that treatment when they leave, just the same as they do with anybody that has been injured during service. There are groups out there that they can go, and apparently the most common reason for a medical discharge in the armed forces is because of, if I can phrase it properly, musculoskeletal rehabilitation. So if it's a musculoskeletal injury, there is a service specially for those people that have left because of that issue. So they're dealing with other issues there. So they should be dealing with the mental health issues, and that should be a top priority rather than bottom of the ladder priority that they've gone, oh, do you know what? We should be doing this service because we've served for our Queen, now King and country. There should be something to help us get back into that country. And there isn't. It wasn't there quick enough. And that's why a lot of these people, unfortunately, have struggled and have not managed to get back into society the way they expected them to.
Yeah.
And that's where that downhill spiral starts, because the support's not there. Then and obviously I've seen films and documentaries where they've looked at United States and how after the Vietnam War there was a lot of people coming home and they didn't know what to do with themselves. They'd seen and heard such awful things, and it started a downhill spiral, and they felt as if there wasn't anything there to help them.
That doesn't surprise me. Right, I'm going to run through these comments quickly. Yeah, Vaughn, tell me about it. Miss them all the time. Holly says you're taught to not tell about anything or you would be abused. That doesn't only surprise me. We're very good, Andy. Thank you very much for joining us. Holly says I would still fight for my country, just not the government. Sarah Louise says I used to love listening to my grandfather and how he served in Africa and how he was at the Nuremberg trials and guarded the Nazi prisoners on Perry Point. Lois, this is why there are stories to be heard but not remembered. That's why it's so easier to talk with other veterans. They won't even bring it up again. Vaughn says the forces do keep a lot to themselves. I wish my grandparents and dad had told us what had happened. I found out at my dad's funeral he'd been a prisoner in the Japanese POW camp. Alan Ellis says respect to all veterans from an ex-Royal Welsh. How do you pronounce that?
Fusilier.
Right. Fusilier. Sorry, Alan. There's some words I just can't say in the slaughter. Vaughn says that's what was happening to my nephew. Unfortunately, he thought a drink would help him sleep and took those visions away, but he was very wrong. They let you go and just don't give a crap. And I think the last three are just conversation. I'm going to bring up something because, Viv pointed it out the other night when I spoke to Viv and I said I was doing the show. And Viv said about a lot of people these days, and it's not just Viv that I've heard it from. I've heard it from Dan as well, and I've seen Dan was really quite passionate, and I can't remember if it was this year or last year, but he had a vent on Facebook about the amount of people nowadays, when it comes to poppy season, no one wears a poppy as much anymore. I think that's really, really quite sad, if I'm really honest.
I personally think a lot of that now is because we've now got to a stage in society where we don't want to offend anybody. That is the core issue. We've got to a stage now where we have to watch what we do or what we say because we might offend somebody. Now, regardless, the poppy emblem itself is to remember the fallen, regardless of who they are. It's to remember the fallen. So you shouldn't be afraid to wear a poppy. I always wear mine, and I always buy the little metal ones with the year on. And I've been doing that since they started making them back in, I think, 2013, maybe a bit earlier than that, the little metal ones. I've been buying them here. I have a poppy on the front of my car. And as soon as it starts looking tatty, I replace it. If there's a poppy seller, regardless of whether I've got a poppy on or not, I will still put whatever, any change in my pocket goes in that pot. You know, they do need the support because, you know, they are there to help provide a service for veterans. And the less people that help support the charity, then the less help they can give. They can only give what they can afford to give. And if they haven't got the money coming in, the services will stop because they then have to rely on another source of income. And they can't just rely on the charities that people do. But
definitely, guys. I would definitely recommend everybody just try wearing a poppy again. Definitely, don't be worried about offending them. They say at the end of the day, poppies represent those who went and fought for our country, and you've got to remember these people never came home to their families. Most of them, a great number of them, never ever came home to their families. So when you're not wearing a poppy, you think of what they're doing for us. You think about their families. And it takes me to one gentleman who I just want to give a wee shout out to. Now, I watch a podcast of a man called James English who interviews all different types of people. And there was one, I only discovered recently that it's not just true crime that he does. He talks to people no matter it's celebrities or whatever. But I've seen that more and more he's talking to people who've been in ASA. That was my old work name. Sorry, I do apologise. The SAS, the army, and things. Now, there's one gentleman who stood out to me, and it made me feel sad when I seen him because he just looked so lost, and I just wanted to reach through the podcast, through the telly to give him a cuddle because it was just, he looked so lost. And his name is Craig Harrison. Craig Harrison was a sniper in the army who could shoot great lengths. And he did an interview with James English, and Craig's words were that he just feels sad. He feels really sad all the time. And there's nothing, he said there was nothing in this world that could change how he feels. Even though he says that obviously he's married and all that, there was nothing in this world that could change how sad that he feels. He just feels so sad all the time. And just watching him, and I just thought, that is a shame on that man, how he really feels. And this takes us into the whole mental health and the suicidal prevention, because there is a high rate of people who have been in the veterans that feel like, as Wayne touched on the night, guys, that obviously they can't cope with coming back to civilization. after spending many years. Well, is it Civvy Street you called it, isn't it? Civvy
Yeah.
Street. I didn't want to say Civvy Street in case I said it wrong. Who come back to Civvy Street that can't function. And I mean, we've touched on a lot of our shows where we talk about people who can't adapt outside prison life, but then you've got to look at the flip coin of things with people that can't cope with normal life coming out such services.
It's very
And
similar. It's very similar to people coming out of prison and trying to adjust to that freedom. And being in the military is it's almost exactly the same. You're told
mm,
when you've got to be at point A. You're told when to be at point B and what you've got to be wearing, what you've got to be doing. You're literally told what you're doing from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed. And then
mhm,
even in your sleep, sometimes you're literally told what you're doing. You dream it. You literally dream it. But that is something that's drummed into you from the day you join and right the way through to when you leave. That thought process is always there. So when you come into Civvy Street, you're looking for that thought process and it's not there. That higher, the higher rank, be it an NCO or just a CO, anybody that's above your rank turns around and says, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. But that person's no longer there. So your mind is looking for that person and it's not. And that's when everything starts falling apart because that discipline and that way of doing things has gone. And
mhm,
you are so used to it that it's become a part of your life. And now that part of your life is missing. You're like, whoa, where's it gone? Oh, shit, I don't know what to do next.
yeah.
And that's when the issues are all there. The second you leave, because the support's not there from either, even if it was to be, you're going to be leaving. So they do the evaluation to see if there's any issue there. If there is an issue, they can start the ball rolling to help you try and come to terms with anything that could be there. So that
Mhm,
when you come out into Civvy Street, that service is there for you to continue helping you. And
yeah.
then it should, in theory, make things a lot easier for them to be able to move on and restrict them from heading into that downward spiral.
Mhm,
So far, that hasn't been the case.
no.
And then they stand there and they say, "Oh, it's all right because we've got plenty of veterans that we can rely on if needs be." No, I think you will find that if I know it was mentioned earlier on, if something like conscription was to happen, which that's not going to happen, way off down the line yet. They've got to be on our doorstep before that would happen. Um, you know, even if conscription would happen, you would find the suicide rate would go up, or the amount of people, veterans, leaving the country would go up as well. Because there'd be no way. A lot of these people, some of them are quite happy to go back, but there'll be ones that are so sort of been left out of the system for so long that they wouldn't want to go back, and they would do everything in their power to stop themselves from going back.
Mhm,
It's a double-edged sword. Some will go back, but others are like, no. You've shit on me, you've made me redundant, you've just put me out the pasture and just pretended I don't exist. So why should I go back? It changes their attitude because you feel like you've been dumped out on the street with no hope. There's nothing you can do. You're made to feel useless and discarded. And it shouldn't be the case. Anybody that leaves the armed forces is worth their weight in gold. In fact, worth more than their weight in gold. They need to be looked after and they need to be prevented from getting onto that downhill spiral.
mhm. I was just looking up there. I was going to look up statistics of veterans and suicide. But I've actually came across, guys, an interesting website called veteransgateway.org.uk. And I was just something really just caught my eye there. And it says, "Are you a veteran with experience of dementia and living in your own home?" And I just thought that was really really nice. Um, but there's so many helplines out there, guys.
Yeah.
That I'm speaking to all veterans out there, that ex-veterans. But I don't care, because I don't like this word ex-veterans, right? Because at the end of the day, you've still went out, you've still served your cause, and you've still done the country proud. And let me tell you something, guys. And this is a really serious show tonight, and usually I'm the laughy jokey type, right? But I am really serious with the bottom of my heart for people like Wayne, for people like Mark, for people like Craig Harrison, the British sniper. Yous have done our country, and this is not just UK veterans, this is across the world. Whether you're in America, whether you're in Ukraine, whether you're wherever in the world, right? Yous guys have done a good bloody service, and you should be proud of yourselves. And don't ever, ever feel like yous guys have let yourselves down. You've
Yeah.
let the country down. Don't feel like that, because for what yous have done, guys, yous have got some amount of balls
Yeah.
to
I,
do what yous have done and seen what you see. So be
that
proud of yourselves.
one that is one of the biggest issues I found when I've spoken to a few veterans, especially a couple up in the city centre here. You know, they stood there and they've said they feel like dirt. You know, the youngsters that walk past and go, look at him, he's all dirty, he smells, all that rubbish.
Yeah.
And I'm talking with them and I'm thinking, do you know what? These kids haven't got a clue.
Yeah.
You know, they think their life revolves around having a laugh with their mates and sitting in front of Call of Duty on their games consoles. If they were to be instantly put into that situation that that poor guy has been through, whether it was Afghanistan, Iraq, Falkland Islands, or even go right the way back to World War II, if
Yeah.
they were to put themselves in that physical situation, they would be a complete melt. They wouldn't know what to do with themselves. And in fact, they would probably curl up in a ball, just like our veterans do now, because of people like them that make them feel worthless. But the veterans themselves need to sort of take a step back and go, hang on a minute, you can take the piss out of me, but I've seen things that would make you poop your pants. I've seen and I've done things that you will never do. The only things you'll get as close to that is by playing your games console in your nice cozy house with your nice privileged food and sweets and drinks and everything else, and not realise what we've been through.
Yeah.
And that
Mhm.
is probably the biggest issue nowadays, is the fact that you see a veteran in a doorway and people all just walk past and go totally snub them, not realising what that poor sod has gone through.
Yeah.
And they
Right.
snub them, or they call them names, or throw things at them.
Mhm.
I mean, for a prime example, a beggar, he wasn't ex-military, but he was begging, and he had a little sign on his legs, and a little dog by the side of him to try and go for a bit of clout to have help. Now, this old lady who was part of the Women's Land Army during the war, she'd been in Sainsbury's, she'd brought some some groceries, and she came out and she gave this guy an apple, and he threw it back at her, and he turned around and he said, "I want money, you B word." And that was it. There was about 4 or 5 people nearby that heard him say that, and they pounced on him. Left this poor old dear in absolute tears because he threw this apple back at her. She felt she was doing the right thing by giving the bloke an apple after seeing the sign that said hungry and homeless. Nothing about penniless and homeless. It was hungry and homeless. The
Yeah.
first word was what she went by, hungry. So she gave him an apple.
And
Now,
that's what she got
this
thanks for.
lady, like I said, she was in the Women's Land Army. She was apparently she'd been helping out on the local farms because we had a lot of orchards around our area. And we went through a lot of fruit because down here we'd got a lot of American air bases as well.
Yeah.
So the farms around here were all sort of dealing with fruit and that for the bases. And so, of course, around this area, we'd got a lot of the German bombers were flying over and a lot of the dogfights in this area. And we had a German bomber just land not far from where this house is. So she survived all of those issues only to be shouted down at by this guy who claimed to be hungry and homeless. And that is exactly how our veterans on the streets are feeling today. When they sit there, even if they don't say anything, they've got a sign there saying, ex-military, hungry and homeless, please help. And someone stands there and goes, why should I help you? You should be helping yourself. They don't understand. They don't know, and they never will know or understand.
They will know. Vaughn says, I always wear a poppy and decorate my front way. Annette says, spot on. I do the same. Wayne Lynn says, we were them over here a lot less now. Alan does charity Ghost Invest to raise money for H4H. That's Holly's talking to Alan there. So true, Wayne. There is a lot of supportive people coming out of prison. Vaughan says 100% agree, Wayne. Holly says that old man veteran was once more badass than they'll ever be.
Yeah.
Vaughan says totally agree. Lois, they've fought for the right to the support after spending time in the forces. They should hold their heads up high, but they should have the support there to help. But a lot of them are broken. Holly says there is still beauty in the breaking, and then they're two are having a conversation. They've
been through a lot, and then they've come out. The support should continue to be there for those people, but they're not, and they're brought out into a society that shuns them.
Yeah.
But there's no reason why they should be shunned. A veteran should not be cast into the shadows and be forgotten about because of the things he's done for their freedom.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah.
And this was a big thing after This was a big thing after World War II. They fought for our freedom. And even now, when you look at the likes of the 101st Airborne Easy Company, you look at the biographies of the guys that survived the Second World War, and obviously it then ultimately went on to the series Band of Brothers. But you look at the biographies of each of the individual surviving members, and you look at the hardships they had when they left. Mm-hmm. And there was one in particular who ended up committing suicide because of it. He went through the war. He completed everything that had happened during the war. He went home and in 1967 tried shooting himself.
Oh my God.
And it's because there wasn't the support there. And these things still happen. These things still happen today where we are made to feel worthless. Oh, why did you fight for them for? What a waste of time, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, yes, but you don't know what could have happened. If we'd have just stepped back and just let them get on with it, how far would it have gone?
Mm-hmm.
We have to learn from the mistakes of the past.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Says, this is another thing that needs to be learned.
Oh God, without a shadow of doubt. And I think the older generation, Vaughan says, understand and respect him, but the younger generation have no clue. The gov does not give them a lot of thought. Yeah. Hi Parker, how you doing? Do you know what I want to do, right? Because I thought it would be nice, right? And I came across a website because I looked up about old letters that have been written in the First World War. And there's one in particular I would like to read. And it's from a man who used to be a sailor, and he wrote a letter to his sister in 1916, which is, Dear Gertie, I've written 2 or 3 times recently, so you may get them together. We've been very busy for the last few weeks and have got through a great amount of work. We are much better off again as regards potatoes and other foodstuffs, for we have had a great quantity of stores. I fancy we shall be here for a time yet. Anyway, it looks like it with such a quantity of stores abroad. You will see I am telling you the same things over and over again. At least I know I have told you them once or twice, but everything about is all of a sameness kind of thing. Ships here, there, and everywhere now, but oh, wait a minute. But soon we shall have a move, that is, when we can get through the White Sea. We shall have to look after all the shipping. The snow is fast disappearing now. I came across an article in the paper the other day about this district, and it said that 14 or 15 years ago, bears used to roam around here, but there seems to be nothing around now except the wild fowl, which are very numerous. I believe salmon are numerous at certain times of year. The 2nd and the 3rd of May we had a terrific snow blizzard. We should have left the ship to go away and do some work on another ship, but we could not get away from our ship. It was so rough. We have no night now. The sun goes down, but it never goes dark. It's eternally daylight. Of course, I've told you we had an entire change round, and I have a new job now. Part of the ship I have not half the time I used to have, but I enjoy the robust work much better, and I get to see much more with working away. We got up at 6:30 and work until 1 o'clock, so I'm presuming that must be in the morning. So we put a few hours in, don't we? This is what we are working away. Did you get? I'm not going to read that bit because that's just him asking a bit more thingy. Tell Dad I shall. Tell Dad I shall to him as soon as I can get enough to tell him about. Give my best love to everyone at home. I often think about you all. I'm yours ever, Ted. And that just shows you what that was like in 1916. And I
Yeah.
just thought that would be nice, guys, to obviously read some sort of letters from people who have served as veterans at some point in life, whether it's a way back in God knows how far back or even now, guys, and I always say this, it we just we wouldn't have the things we have today if it wasn't for veterans. And I will keep saying it. And guys, I, if anything, I would love for you guys to take away for this show tonight is to be mindful. Please be mindful when you're out in the streets and you see someone who is homeless. Even I'm not saying you have to give like big bucks, but do what Wayne did. Even give them a coffee, even anything at all. But please be mindful because you've got to look at the state of the world today and the way the world is, you know, and these people should be treated a million times better than what they are getting treated, and it's a shame. And I'm totally saying to veterans as well out there who are suffering, who feel that they're alone. You're not alone. There's everything out there for you guys. And if I could show you through my eyes how much yous have done and how proud, really guys, please reach out because let's get the suicide rate down low for
Yeah.
the veterans.
I
Definitely,
mean,
guys.
the thing is that I know that I was only a small cog in a big wheel or in the big machine of things. I was only a small cog, just not even that, to be honest. But when people say thank you for your service, I'm like, you don't need to thank me because I signed up to do that. I wanted to do my part and I did my part. No need to thank me because it was something I wanted to do. And it's like, even now in the paranormal field, if I help somebody, they go, oh, thank you. Well, no, that's what I'm here for. That's why I've done it. And exactly the reason why I joined the forces. I joined the forces because I wanted to do something for Queen and country. And I did. And I would continue to do now. But it's the issues. We get disillusioned by everything that's going on. And you look around and you think, oh, right, okay. And the latest joke at the moment is how small our armed forces are. I know exactly where the blame is to be held for our armed forces being so small. That's neither here or there. So what we need to do now is we need to build back our armed forces. We are still quite well known throughout the world as having one of the best armed forces services in the world, even though it is small in numbers. So that's something that we need to be proud of, and we need to keep a hold of that heritage. This what was a great nation had 40% of the world at one time, simply because of its armed forces.
Yep.
Something to be proud of. Something to be proud of nowadays, because with our armed forces being as small as it is, they're still standing there saying, we are going to defend you. Even if we do get blown to shit, we are still going to be defending you.
Yeah.
And that's why we need to get our armed forces back to where it should be, because then we can stand there and go, you will be proud of us. And then the support network that's there for them when they leave has also got to be there, so that there is no fear of joining the forces, because that's one of the big issues. Nobody wants to join the armed forces because there's no help for them when they leave.
Yeah.
And if I was, say, I come out of school now, we have to come out of school at 18 now. So if I came out of school at the age of 18, I'm like, would I want to join the army? Would I want to join the Air Force? I don't know. Because is there anything for me when I come out?
Yeah.
We've heard so much in the news about support services for the military is so lacking that nobody wants to join the armed forces. So am I going to want to do that? And the answer is no. If I'm going to be expected to go to a war zone and do what I'm expected to do and come back and not get any support for it, I'm not going to join in the first place.
Oh, God. Hell no.
I've actually spoken to people that have said, do you know what? I'm going to go and join the force. I might join the army. I might join them and try and be a drone pilot. And do you know why? Because during the Afghan conflict, the drones were being flown from RAF Marham in Norfolk. So these drone pilots are sitting in a base in Norfolk on home soil, not a problem in the world. And there they are at a console, flying a drone over Afghanistan. Again, there's nothing there because they're sitting in front of a TV screen. They might as well be a kid playing Call of Duty on the computer.
Yeah.
And it's a completely different scenario nowadays. But the kids still do not look at it and go, I'm going to join the military. I'm going to be in the army. I'm going to be in the Air Force. I'm going to be in the Navy. Because they're looking at it and going, but there's nothing there for when I come out.
Yeah.
And the media haven't helped.
No.
So between the media and the government, they need to look at it and go, right, get these people tested before they leave. If they need the help for mental health issues, let's get it to them before they go. And then while they're out, continue that support, continue that network, get them involved with something to help them back into Civvy Street, and keep in contact with them constantly. Get these support services there, even if it's something like Facebook groups. I mean, I see it on Facebook and TikTok. There's Ricky Veteran. He's a vet, and he's always posting about things to do with the military and ex-military's personnel. and he does a brilliant job. And that's the sort of network that's needed. Because it would be so quite easy just to disappear into the background and pretend we never existed.
Oh God, aye. Vaughan says, sounds like the letters my granddad sent from Iceland to my nan. Vaughan says, just be kind, right? I'm going to combine your questions together, right? So the two questions is, do you think that there is going to be the future though, Wayne, and will future wars be fought with technology?
It already is. We've already got people going around through the internet, looking into things. You know that you send hackers into a foreign country's computer systems to try and bring them down on the knees that way.
Yeah.
You know, pilots in Marham flying drones over Afghanistan. That's been going for quite a long time now. You know, radio controlled craft is such an easy way of doing it. Then you can go back to when the battleship was invented. They're sitting on a battleship firing on the coastline. They know nothing can hit them. So it's all remote destruction. They're on a battleship firing these great big shells, like 20, 30 miles inland to hit a target on land. They're safe on that ship. They've got no worries. You know, the only problem is now is the aircraft, and that's why they started using drones. It's easier to use a drone where they're not going to lose a member of personnel or two members of personnel when all you're going to lose is just an airplane. But now you've got the new bit of technology. Obviously, this is not the right show to be talking about it, but it's Dragon's Breath, which is the new laser. It only costs £10 to fire, whereas a missile that would do the same job costs tens of thousands. You know, so the technology is now there. It's become a lot cheaper, so you could wage a war for a lot less now, or you can defend yourself for a lot less. But it's trusting that technology, and that's where you need and that's where you need the right personnel for the job. So,
well, I really want to start to thank Wayne for tonight. I want to thank Wayne actually for his service. I want to thank him for even suggesting doing this show. Because seriously, it's been a really, really good show. So I want to thank Wayne for that. So, Mr. Seaton, 2 seconds to balance my tablet and my leg. I want to thank everybody for watching, for supporting. I do please encourage you guys, straight after this show, I want you guys to please plug in. If you are still up for watching, please plug in Zak Clayton's 22-hour veteran show just now. It's currently on just now in Things Network. You will find it there. Just pop in and say hello, show your support. I want to also obviously thank all our veterans for across the whole entire galaxy for what they do. You guys do an awesome job. Whether you're ex or current veteran, you do an amazing job, guys. And honestly, keep going because you are doing so well. With that being said, guys, I didn't want to do this at the start of the show because obviously we were running a bit late. Guys, last weekend we lost 2 investigators. Well, an investigator and another investigator. We lost Scott Bauer and we lost Cliff Jones. Now, Cliff Jones was one of my most regular viewers. And the way that I see it, guys, is without yous people, we wouldn't have shows at all. Like, the shows wouldn't even exist. And viewers become friends and then they become family. So with that being said, I went and spoke to Cliff's wife, Ellen, and I asked Ellen for permission to do a 2-day event for Cliff, dedication to Cliff. And thankfully, Ellen agreed and said yes, that was fine, that I could do that for Cliff. So, with that being said, on the 14th and the 15th of March, there will be a 2-day show between To the Grave and Back and Friday Frighteners, dedicated to Cliff Jones. Now, I would love for you guys to come along and show your dedication, obviously pay tribute to Cliff, come and share your stories, come and, watch as we talk about not just Cliff himself, but did have a 2-night where we're talking about history, because he was very, very passionate about history, and I can always remember Cliff. Any books that man wanted me to know about was in my DMs quicker than I knew, and I'll always appreciate that. But he was definitely a guy, so please check that out, guys. Tomorrow night and Friday Frighteners, we will have the one and only Nettie. Nettie is coming on to the show. And then I'm going to pass you to Mr. Spookinori, because me always get my days mixed up when I talk about Wayne, so Wayne can talk about Wayne.
Thanks. Yes, tomorrow night I had to extend the Spookinori 10th anniversary competition because we've only got a few entries, and I've had a few things here at home to deal with, so I thought it's best to extend it until tomorrow night at midnight. I think I've got 4 entries so far, so if anybody else wants to enter, you've still got until midnight GMT to enter tomorrow night. The winner will be revealed live on Sunday. So yeah, and there is a special Spookinori group chat. So if you want to join the group, and then get onto the group chat and the story, or you can either send it to me directly on Messenger, or you can put it into the group chat and we'll read it. You could also send it via email at wayneseeden.co.uk, which obviously, if you there's me, get your finger going in the right direction. There's my name there. It's Wayne Seeden at hotmail.co.uk. And then the winner will get 4 signed books from the Spookinori series, and that will be Sunday night. And then Monday, it's back to normal with us nutcases, myself, Mark, Manley, for the Dark Mirror radio show at 9:30 GMT.
And I recommend that you guys go and watch them, because they're really a good pair. But don't tell them I said that, because I don't want them to think I'm soft. I'm just going to quickly run through the last of the comments. Wayne, you're awesome. Ditto respect, Wayne. Holly says, I'm part of the greatest fraternity. Vaughn says, I didn't know Scott, but Cliff was everybody's friend. He was part of Unity and its eternity. Oh yeah, I'm gonna definitely miss Cliff without a shadow of a doubt. Eric says, now I guess I'll have to build that time machine. Vaughn says, oh, I better get clicking tomorrow. and Vaughn says they're crazies. But again, guys, thank you very much for tuning into the show tonight. It does mean a lot. And as I said, please go over and check Zak out and send him your love. For crying out loud, here comes my boy. You've just came at the wrong time, because we're just wrapping up.
Oh, jeez.
But I tell you what, see, since you're here, I'll tell you what, we'll do an extra 10 minutes because it's no fair to be wrapping up just as you've zapped yourself in. So we might as well go for another 10 minutes since you've arrived. So just forget everything we said there, folks.
Yeah, I just finished up recording the show I had to do. So it went pretty well, though it didn't really go as long as I was hoping for it to go, but it did last for at least a good 45 minutes. So what I was talking about, again, it was kind of a special Nick Files episode, which is, again, because I already just did it, it's pre-recorded. So, for those that want to check it out, obviously I won't be responding or anything like that. Just want to be clear on things. So, but when I put the slideshow together, it was, I had an idea, which, well, it wasn't necessarily just my idea. Jan actually helped me out putting this together. But with the amount of information that, we were able to find, it was very limited of what we were looking for, because what she had the idea of talking about, because since this is obviously something for, not just for our American allies, or excuse me, our American veterans, but also for veterans in other countries, we were actually going to explore it also in a different way, because believe it or not, and of course, don't look at it the wrong way. And actually, Lois, I think I might have told you a little about it before, was you also kind of have to look at some veterans from, I guess if you want to say, from the enemy countries, like, veterans who have fought on the other side and how greatly affected they are after, they fought in a war or something like that. Because whether you're on the allied sides or the enemy sides, either way, it's all the same. It's going to have the effect for soldiers on both sides in this case, PTSD and that's basically what Jan had the idea of me talking about. Now, when I was trying to look for the information in this case, it was not easy. It really wasn't. I kind of had to jump from two different subjects to create a full slideshow. Like, first I was talking a little bit about, with what we're talking about throughout today, like the mental health and whatnot. But then I also decided to talk, I guess, kind of give like a little history lesson, if you will, about like different allied forces coming together, like during the invasion of, Iraq from the early 2000s. Yeah. So it was a little bit more difficult than I thought it was going to be, but at least I was able to create kind of a storyline or educational point.
Yeah. I mean, Wayne's knocked it out the ballpark for me tonight. Honest to God, without that man down there tonight, I don't know what I would have done. So I kind of felt like I was interviewing him tonight. It was kind of like, spotlight's on you, Wayne. Right, so I'm putting you to my light. So it was good, but I'm glad that you joined us at the end. Nick, I just felt terrible because I seen you coming literally as I was ready to say bye. And then I went, oh, you know what, another 10 minutes from the heart, just so that obviously, because it would have been terrible for you to come on and I'm going, bye. And you're like, hi.
You left Nick in the background going, what's going on? What's happened?
Aye. We're all saying bye, and everybody's saying bye, and then Nick's like, "Ha! Oh, right, okay, all right, fine." But it's been really, I mean, it was really, really insightful. So quickly, from American point of view, and I'm sure Zak's probably said it 10 million times today. What help is there for people in America, Nick?
Well, see, even for me, it's as far as help goes for veterans in this case. See, again, I haven't been hugely, again, in spite of what I found. Here actually, I could even read one of the slides quickly for what I wrote for the mental health.
Oh, please don't let me spoil your next show.
No. I'm just going to read just a quick sentence, not an actual slide, basically. Where was it? See, again, I only had so much time to put this together. Wasn't really able to really, actually memorize a lot of this. So give me 1 second here.
Nicky Kanui.
Okay, so this is actually a really good sentence here that I'll just read. for a lot of those these veterans who suffer from these mental health issues, right here that my mom actually found, believe it or not, she helped me out with this too. She said,
Good luck, Mrs. P. Mrs. M. I keep saying Mrs. P.
So one sentence I'll read is that one here says, in order to prevent further mental health issues from occurring in their transition and reintegration into civilian life, we need to focus more on the employment and career transition instead of putting more dollars and media attention and efforts into explaining why veterans are broken rather than why we're civic assets and we will be the best employees at your company, which the statement truly offers. That's for sure.
It does. It really, really does. Right. Since you're here, Nick, and since I'm not going to see you on Saturday, right? I think all together now. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Nicky Canoe. Happy birthday to you. Well, you're not going to be in Frighteners tomorrow night, so I'm going to have to just sing it right now because I'm not sure that if you see it or not. So I just thought I'd do that wee special treat. That I've been waiting for you coming on all night to sing it to you. I thought you weren't going to come, and I was like that. Oh dear.
Well, thank you either way. Thank you.
And I'll tell you what, Boyle, I've got a few pictures waiting for you, son. But guys, please take care and be kind to each other. And always remember, guys, please be mindful about people in the street. That's all we ask for tonight.
Also, one other thing, I forgot to mention this in the slideshow, so I'll say it now. And for all of our former, our veterans who have served, not just again here in the United States, but for everybody, thank you all for your service.
Definitely. And anything, Mr. Wayne, you would like to add at the end?
Yeah. If you see a veteran on the street, wrapped up in a sleeping bag, looking down, looking sad, looking dirty, just give them 5 minutes of your time.
Yes.
That 5 minutes of your time costs absolutely nothing. Even buy them a cup of coffee.
Right.
Ask them if they need help. They want a sandwich. Anything that could help them. Doesn't have to cost you the earth. Just give them some time. Just 5 minutes of your time. That can make a difference to anybody that is on the streets, whether they're a veteran or not. Just that 5 minutes makes all the difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, now Irene showed up.
I know Irene's joining us. We're leaving as well. Oh my God! See all these people tonight. Hi, Irene. Sorry, sweetie.
I just want to say something very quickly, and this is actually just in regards to what you just said, Wayne. Is I actually did something like that a number of years ago. Can't believe almost 10 years ago now, and not necessarily a homeless person, but I was with some friends. Originally, we were just hanging out on a beach area, just hanging out, being young, of course. And there was somebody who was walking, there was someone that was walking who had an old man in a wheelchair. Based on his appearance, he looked like he probably was in his 80s or so. And I think he served in we found out that he either served in Korea or he served in Vietnam, one of the two. And, unlike most modern day, because a lot of us were still in our a lot of my friends and I, we were late teens, early 20s. A lot of times they just want to care about what they want to do. We were really it was one of those rare times that us as a youth group, we walked up and when we heard about his story, which we were standing for again about probably 5 minutes, he told us what happened, like as if we were his grandkids. And all of us said the same thing, thanks for serving our country. Thanks for your service, everything. So I've never seen another youth group like that, especially us kids that young that would actually take their time to listen to a veteran. So I've already done that. And if I'm given the chance, I would definitely do it again.
Yeah.
This has made me emotional when I read this there. This has been very insightful and emotional show tonight. Bless all the armed forces worldwide. Thank you very much, one, and thank you very much for tuning in, guys. And please nip over to Zach, even for a wee 2 seconds, and just acknowledge and just say thank you. That would mean a lot, guys. But everybody have a good night. Take care and be kind. See you all